I'm Cision, and you're listening to Unsubscribed. Every episode, I sit down with business leaders to help you question everything you thought you knew about marketing. If you enjoy this show, please do subscribe and leave a review on YouTube or your favorite podcast player. Now, on to this episode. My guest today is AJ Bruno. AJ is the CEO and co-founder of QuotaPath, a sales compensation platform that helps sales teams calculate their commissions. Prior to QuotaPath, AJ spent 6 years at TrendKite, where he founded and grew the company to 250 employees and sold it to Cision for $225 million. He's the father of 3 young girls and an avid pilot who can be found flying around over the skies of Boston. Welcome to the Unsubscribed podcast, AJ.
Thanks, Pierce. Thanks for having me. I appreciate your green today that you're wearing, and I also wear green. We actually just launched our new brand today. So QuotaPath just launched.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's looking good. For those of you tuning into the audio only, AJ is rocking just an awesome QuotaPath shirt and hat too.
Yeah, well, Pierce, you've got the matching style with me today. So. Would you consider that in Canada? Is that a cardigan? Is that what you would consider that?
This kind of like my zip-up bomber. It's got kind of the knack green and blue. We have similar colors. As a marketing guy, I really appreciate your whole branding.
Yeah, of course.
Here. It's nice.
My CMO appreciates it too, for sure.
Well, right on. Hey, it's so great to have you on. I've got a ton of questions, but I'd love to start. I know you're at QuotaPath now, but I'd love to start with TrendKite, which was, I believe, your first company.
Is correct.
Can you give us sort of the founding story of that one?
Oh, that's a great founding story and origin story. So first off, I've always wanted to start a company. I always thought of myself in an entrepreneurial spirit. I've done some things. I started a company in college that was like, I don't count it as my first company. It was a half. And the real quick story on that, it was called controlthebuzz.com. And it was a website that you went to that was blank. It had a text box. And for $1, you could change anything you wanted and say that text box or change that text to anything you wanted to and just had to pay $1. This was before Twitter. This was 2004, 2005. And so I'm very excited to go down that road. I after leaving college, I had a BA in economics, and I really knew that I wanted to do something that would be like down the path of starting a company. I had a couple of consulting offers. I had done an internship with NFL Films here in the States. It was a lot of fun. So anyway, I talked to an uncle, and he suggested that I go into sales. I was like, sales? Why sales? You'll learn everything about revenue and bottom line, top line. Anything you need to know about a company exists in sales. So I took him up on that. I joined a company called Meltwater, was an individual contributor for a couple of years. And then I moved to sales management in Philadelphia office. I eventually opened an office in San Diego, and then was in the Bay running West Coast sales operations for a little while. And during that time, I had a boss that I didn't get along well with. It was very challenging. Felt like I was hearing mixed messages, and it was just not a great situation for me. But he did do something that was really empowering and very impactful, which was he took all of the leaders to go see Tony Robbins. And if you don't know who Tony Robbins is, I didn't know at the time. I knew him from the movie Shallow Hal. He shows up with Gwyneth Paltrow and Jack Black. He's like the guy that hypnotizes Jack Black's character. Very old movie at this point. Anyway, I went there, walked on coals, did all the things, and left saying, I'm going to start a company. And knew I was going to start. I had 2 goals. I wanted to buy an airplane. And I was going to start a company. And I flew back to San Diego and told my wife that we're starting a company, and I'm going to buy an airplane within 3 years. So that led down the path. I started the company with the only other person that I knew that knew anything about startups. This guy, Matt Allison. I had worked with him briefly at Meltwater in Philly, but he lived out in San Diego. We would talk every single day about startups. And we ended up landing on the idea of this, what became TrendKite, this idea around public relations attribution, PR attribution. At the time, I was working for the company Meltwater that was very much in the media monitoring space. So it was like a clipping service, but analytics and BI were more of a tack-on solution and reporting. And so knew that the way that the direction of the market was headed was more towards like, how do we get more PR at the seat of the table of marketing with CMOs? They have so much attribution and channel attribution. And you know this, Pierce, obviously, marketing standpoint, it's like the value of PR is very challenging. So our goal was to really understand that and understand your earned media, whether it was Philadelphia Inquirer, the New York Times, now all of the was it Toronto Sun, Vancouver Sun,
Toronto, yeah.
All of the Canadian publications are keeping me in this moment.
There's a lot of suns up here.
Suns. Yeah. So we went down that path and were wildly successful. I was founder and president of the company, and I ran all of growth. So we had clients like Hershey's, Hershey's, Nike, Sephora, just all of these great brands that worked with us. I think about a quarter of the Fortune 500 were customers by then. We had over 5,000 customers when we sold the company to Cision PR Newswire in 2018. So there's a lot more in there on the origin piece of it, but it ultimately ended up being two guys starting a company in San Diego, moving back to Philadelphia, going through a business accelerator called Dream Adventures in 2013, getting funded immediately, like right out of that program within 4 months of starting the company by Silverton Partners. And then away we went in Austin. And so we were based in Austin, Texas for a period of time before moving back to Philadelphia. And now I fly, I'm all over the place, but QuotaPath today, which was started directly as TrendKite got bought, is based in Austin, Philly, and then quite a few folks that are remote.
Yeah, it's amazing. And congrats, like your first company, you build it up over 6 years and sell it for hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, that's really the dream. And I read somewhere, and correct me if I'm off here, but that you went from 0 to 25 million in ARR in 4 years. Is that right?
Yeah, we had a very, very fast rise as an organization, and 0 to 25 million from 2014, really, when we got sales kicked off a year after we started the company, to 2018. And so it was pretty much that triple, double framework, although I think we're not quite in the second double, but it was really seeing strong growth along the way. And it was a really exciting time. It was all the things that a 2014 to 2018 inside sales team would afford. There were 150 folks inside. The sales floor was very loud on a daily basis. And it was mayhem. It was the Thunderdome, as we like to call it.
Wow.
It was a lot going on.
So you had, and what was the team structure there of those 150 people?
I had eventually, at the height, I had account management, part of SDR, and the new business sales team. So on the new business team, we had 4 managers. Actually, we had 6 managers. And we had like an associates program where folks were like getting graduated up. But 4 mean sales managers that were managing between 6 and 8 AEs, different levels. On the account management team, we had 3 teams over there. And then we had both a BDR, or actually it was an MDR program, we called it. So inbound, outbound team on the SDR front. And then part of the outbound is the team that I managed as well. And that was, I think, about 40 folks overall. So 40 there, probably call it 70 AEs, and then 30 to 40, 30 AMs.
Wow. And so when you look at that team and that growth that you were able to achieve, like, how the heck did you do that? Was it the right product, the right time? Was it your sales strategies? Was it I'm assuming it's a combination of things, but when you look back, like what were those big factors that helped you grow at that speed?
I mean, the learning and growing, I think the community, Austin community, was really, really helpful throughout the entire the entire time there. As Austin was a great community. There are a lot of folks that were moving there, a lot of younger, talented. Another thing that we took advantage of was just the massive movements in technology, both MarTech and sales tech. The how ABM was starting to become a thing and like wasn't a thing until really that time. And then we also had this just change in how sales and sales automation was done. Think about tools like Outreach or SalesLoft. We used SalesLoft at that time. And so like there was a lot of things that we took advantage of very early to help us get an edge and get in front of competitors. We didn't have a huge competitive market. We were competing directly against Meltwater and Cision, honestly. Those are our two big competitors. And there are a couple of folks, a couple organizations, startups like us that were just trying to get started and hitting on some of the same messaging, but slightly unique. And we were all finding our swim lanes at that time.
Hmm. What would you say were kind of some of the biggest challenges that you faced as a founder in your first company?
Oh gosh. Well, if I were to just say bluntly, and all of the things that happened, we were 2 weeks away from running out of cash at one time. My co-founder was the CEO. We had to bring on a CEO at a different time. I had some HR challenges because we had such a large sales team. There were definitely a lot of things that happened during that time that like I look back at were learnings for sure. The one thing that was funny about this whole thing of like most founders would come on here and say product market fit, but we actually had product market fit day one. I knew the market as well as anyone could. And at that time, there weren't like 15 other companies that were funded that were in this jostling for the same position. And so that was like the thing that was actually kept driving us no matter how dysfunctional some things were. And honestly, we were actually like, I really enjoyed the aspects where we were very functional. We had a strong go-to-market engine. The entire team was in Austin. It was easy to get FaceTime. We built the product pretty cleanly upfront. Timing worked out for us in terms of like the venture and the funding rounds. So there are a lot of things that went really, really well. But mostly, I think the things that like were challenging were I had to learn and I had to grow up. I was 27 when I started the company, and here we are 11 years later. And I learned a lot through those 5.5 years at TrendKite.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in a similar position. I started my company, so I was never a CEO before. There's definitely a ton to learn about leadership. I feel like you're always learning there. Where did you go to kind of learn and develop into the leader that you are today?
Well, I think sales, I do credit Meltwater for my sales leadership for sure. And I learned very quickly through lots of different, just learning on the job, sure. But then reading Challenger Sales or Sales Acceleration Formula by Mark Robert. So there was like a lot of books that I held. Cracking the Sales Management Code was another one that I leaned on. And so I learned a lot of frameworks through those. Leadership is something that you learn. And I still take that you either have it or you don't. But it comes and goes. Like there's obviously different ways, Pierce, managing a product and engineering team versus a sales and marketing team. Those are two very, very different types. And I've learned the type of leader that I am where I work well with folks that are very structured under me, like that they have their process and plan. And that's something that I like, I now can take going forward, that I know that like on any hire, they have to have a fairly structured point of view on how they're thinking about things, how they're working. But at the same time, I don't want to hurt the entrepreneurial spirit that they might bring into it. So I think I work best if someone comes to me and wants to work through a problem together and doesn't necessarily always have a solution, but starts up front with like, here's the proposed solutions.
Yeah.
I think another learning on this whole thing was just how managing a board. I've gone through 9 fundraising rounds in 10 years, and I've been in like 60 plus board meetings. About half of those are as a CEO. And I think there's always times where things are going well and it's not as stressful, but it feels like you're as operationally into the business as you possibly can. And then you have periods potentially like this year where there's what we would consider a tech recession, or at least in the funding world, that it's pulled back on tech. And so everyone has these uncertainty. Your investors are trying to figure out the world as well, but they also are trying to air confidence that they have, like, this is what you need to do or not do, and want to be in constant contact because they're not out talking to entrepreneurs as much as they were in the last 3 years. And I think those are things that I look at and I'm like, okay, there are a lot of learnings of here was how I should have better managed the board or better managed the team. And I think those are the leadership lessons. I have a great CEO coach. I think that that's someone I've relied on for the last couple of years in a real big way, and has helped see, because as you know, Pierce, there's not really many people you can talk to. It's a lonely world at the top.
Yeah. No, those are some great shares there as well. I've had a CEO coach for a long time, and I feel like it's a huge help, as well as a peer group as well, that I think is super helpful. Last one about TrendKite, then I want to switch over to QuotaPath. But take me through. I'm curious about your mindset. You built your first company 6 years. You sell it to Cision. Like, did you take any time off, and like, how long did it take, and why did you jump back into starting something else?
I think that's my biggest regret is I had a week vacation that I took a cruise with my wife and some friends, and that was it. Like, literally, that was the only. And even then, I was working through the idea of QuotaPath on that cruise. So yeah, I mean, since I started my career in 2007, I just haven't taken time off in a real meaningful way. I've had, I think, 1-2 week vacation in that time frame, and it's a challenge. It's really tough. But I think this, Pierce. It's entrepreneurs and founders they don't have an off switch. I ultimately do know that at some point in the future, I won't do that again. I will take some time off and have a little bit of a reset. I think it's important. I've seen others do it, especially recently, with whether it's the pandemic or kind of executives getting burnt out or whatever the case may be. I've seen a lot of folks take a little bit of a sabbatical and come back refreshed. And I look at that and I'm like, oh, there's, it's possible to do. I didn't think it was possible at that time. So I'm more bullish on people doing that today than I was previously.
Nice. Yeah. I feel I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and we're, this community of people that are always just wanting to solve problems and tackle hard issues and keep our minds busy with building new things. So I totally get that. And it sounds like you're building something great again at QuotaPath. So, I mean, you're building the second time around now. You've learned a ton from your first company. What are you doing differently this time?
Well, I think the thing that I'm focusing in on a lot more this year is just product. Or this time around, it feels like a year. It's been a year and 20 years all wrapped into one. So we're a product-led organization, and just focusing in and having a heavier product team to really build to what your customers are asking for. As I said, the first time around, I had product market fit. And I think I took that a little bit for granted for QuotaPath, because I dealt with sales compensation since I was in a sales leadership role. And so I knew the problems, I knew the challenges that faced sales leaders, but I took for granted the challenges that faced operations or finance, really. And actually, I took for granted, but my co-founder was the director of revenue operations at TrendKite. So he knew those challenges, but the challenges of finance were the missing link to it. So I think that's something that I like from a learning standpoint. We're we're really, really heavily heads down there. The world's changed quite a bit, as you know. And so the thing where I'm still learning and trying to dig in is, how do you run a company, a remote company? I don't think I've solved that, because I myself am very much an in-person type of personality. And that's a really big challenge in like the world that we live in, is like, how do you do that? And I think 3.5 years, 4 years, almost, it's almost been 4 years since the pandemic. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah,
Yeah, so
I
crazy.
think almost.
Almost 4 years coming up. But that the like ups and downs and the roller coaster of events, and of course, how is generative AI going to change it? I think we're constantly learning. So it's less about what did I take from the first one. It's like, what did I take from last week, and what am I trying to do differently this week?
I'd love to hear some of the things you're doing around, the remote team. At NAC, we're a hybrid team. We have an office. We have about half of our employees are remote. Is there anything that you've found, or are you doing anything proactively to help build that remote culture?
Yeah, I mean, we have our head of people is just an amazing human being. I've worked with her for 7+ years. That's the other thing for QuotaPath, that I've worked with about half the company for over 5+ years.
Nice.
So we have a lot of reliance, and that helps with remote culture. But there's ultimately things that you need to do. So for like example, celebrating our brand launch today, we're going to have a cheers this afternoon that Carrie set up. We also have a virtual poker night that upcoming. We do have an office in Austin and an office in Philadelphia. So we have get-togethers in those offices once a month. We had a in-person kickoff in July, albeit it was in Austin, which was maybe not the best choice of venue given the heat in Texas.
Hot. Yeah.
A little hot, but it was good to get the team. And then we have a virtual kickoff in January. So it's just continuing to keep those things front and center.
And when you do those meetups at your offices, is that just kind of like everyone in those cities come in and get together, or is that the whole company? How do those work?
Yeah, I would say the whole company is important. I mean, we're not a huge company, so it's getting like the 70 folks together is some, and we're all, well, we have a few Canadians, but we're all located in North America, and so it's a lot easier to make those direct connections. I think the other thing to do is I travel to Austin a lot, but I also travel to other cities to meet with customers. And so in that time, like I'll be in Boston for inbound in a couple of weeks and speaking there. Yeah. And so a good opportunity to meet not just with customers, but the employees that are in around Boston.
Yeah, nice. I'm speaking there as well. It's coming up quickly.
It is. I know. I did my first practice last week with the.
Oh, nice. You're ahead of me. So, AJ, I'm a marketing guy now who has the sales team, and I'm learning how complicated sales commission plans can be. Why are they so complicated, and how do you make a good one?
Well, I think there's a couple things that go on. First off, everyone feels that they have their special snowflake. There's a lot of people that are like, it needs to be written on the back of a napkin. But it turns out you can write in really small font on the back of a napkin and write a lot of complicated things. What tends to happen in organizations is that it starts out with great intentions. You have a company objective, a really simple number in terms of financial target and ARR, GMV, or whatever you're targeting. And that waterfalls down to the sales team. But after some period of time, company objectives change, or you raise a round, or you have a new sales leader, you have a new RevOps leader, you have a new finance leader, you have people come into the organization and they have different opinions based on their experience and their backgrounds. The fact that 70% of companies keep their comp in a spreadsheet is really crazy to me, because it's like, why would you keep something that is a payroll function just directly in a spreadsheet? And so when we started the company, we had this like sales view perspective of like, we wanted the sales reps and sales leaders to understand their comp and basically demystify it, create like little Lego blocks to connect. So we didn't have formulas or weren't spreadsheet based software. Over the years, we've realized and brought in what I said with RevOps and finance, and have actually pointed at our product more at the admin folks to really be able to build the plans, the accessibility of making changes, whether it's with a CRM change and how mappings work. We're working. That's where the product led part of it comes in. Today, as we work with organizations like NAC that are scaling and getting bigger, we're realizing for finance that we do need to actually have a spreadsheet type view. And so it's like, how do you create a point of view along those 4 work streams, the reps, the sales leaders, RevOps, and finance, to create a spoken language, a language that they all understand. And at that finance level, the spreadsheet, whether it's FP&A or ERP or accounting software, you do have some level of export import into the spreadsheet. So that's what we're focusing on. That's what our brand refresh really represents, is speaking to that buyer and ensuring that they understand that they're a big part of our journey along the way. And so we have some really big product launches this fall that will help solidify those objectives and speaking to that buyer. So, answering your question, plans we get Frankensteined all the time. We're here to help simplify and help make them understandable.
Right on. Yeah. You got to get the finance people their spreadsheets.
Yes.
That's a must. Yeah.
It is a must.
So I actually thought about this one the other day, and I wanted to ask you. So I feel like a lot of SaaS companies might give a commission to their sales reps for that, like the first year of a subscription, right? And then, we had a scenario the other day where I actually kind of realized, hey, it's actually like it's the best for the company to have a multi-year deal. But if we're only comping the sales reps on the first year, it's typically we'll discount.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, I'd love to hear just your perspective on that.
That's fantastic.
Simple scenario. Like what do you recommend there?
That's a normal scenario and normal use case. And I really appreciate that. So first off, Pierce, directly after this, I'm going to connect you with Graham Collins, who does comp plan consults, to help you all get like the right actual variable comp into QuotaPath. Like that's the first thing I would say, is that we will help align those. The thing that you just said, which is very clear, is like, how do you align company objectives to incentive compensation? That is what we were representing in the next several months with our brand refresh, and how we're actually announcing this to the world is like, you might figured out that this is a variable compensation that you have to institute, but you don't know how to do it. Well, first, is it the actual right thing based on the numbers? And like, let us actually measure some of those numbers in the health of the business and tie them to the inputs of the company objectives and double check that. Secondly, let's actually make some of those changes and shifts. And then third, let's measure those changes and shifts and as we modeled them out and see if they match expectations and forecasts. That's actually, that feedback loop is, you just described exactly how we think about our world and the opportunity that we have, not as commission tracking, but as this compensation management to align your company objectives to the incentive compensation plans that your sales reps have.
Absolutely. That's the one. Sounds good to me. So we actually connected through an outreach. NAC is the customer of QuotaPath, and AJ, you reached out to connect with me just as you do with some of your customers. I thought it was great the way that you're doing this. Could you maybe just share with our listeners, how and why you're connecting with your customers?
Well, I think as we entered this year, we were doing a lot of things that our team was saying that we should do on products. And that's like, you were listening to our sales reps or AM and hearing a lot of that. And the product feedback was there. But as the market was changing, I felt it was really important to like really connect with our customers to truly understand how they're actually thinking about more strategic goals with the organization and how that relates. I mean, Pierce, you literally just described a conversation that I'm having with our customers and what they're aligning. And then that helps informs like our feedback in terms of like, how do I take that? Okay, hey, Graham, you can connect with them and like, let's actually figure out a way to work with them to productize this piece of it. That creates like a lasting relationship, right? So the main goal was, first, let me let me actually reach out to five new customers a week. I'll set myself to those standards. And I do. So I can talk to five customers a week. We also, as a management team, as an exec team, started to sponsor in pairs different outreach. Additionally, my head of revenue operations and myself the last few weeks have met in-person customers at baseball games. So we were at Yankee Stadium 2 weeks ago, and we were at the Phillies game about a week ago. And each game, it's called it's called our summer series. We hosted both prospects and customers, but mostly actually just customers. I think 80% of the folks that showed up each had 20 tickets for each of the games. Most of them were customers. And it was just really interesting. Like, yeah, we were all watching the baseball game. It was fine. But there were so many organic conversations that happened just like this. We were talking about, this new product feature that we're testing out. It came up that one of our product teams had talked to a different customer. Another customer heard that and said, actually, I have that same issue. Can I join these product conversations? And
Nice.
so just ensuring that you're listening to your customers and listening to as much feedback from your customers is something that I took for granted, again, at TrendKite because of product market fit. And then at QuotaPath more because I was more interested in the new business side. I'm a seller by trade, so I love closing deals. But the other side of it, I love talking to customers, just like didn't dawn on me more until the beginning of the year.
Yeah, no, well, I think you do a great job of it. And yeah, I love the baseball series as well. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
It's been, our marketing team is awesome. It's been great to work with a team that's thinking outside the box and doing things that is like very focused on both pipeline generation, but also just like retention and opportunity to get even closer to our customers.
Nice. So we're going to move into the rapid fire section of this. But
Love the rapid fire.
Before we do, where can people find you and learn more about QuotaPath?
Well, LinkedIn is the easiest route to connect with me, and you write a personal note saying that you listen to this podcast. I'll definitely respond. But the other way to do that is because we just launched our brand, and I will plug QuotaPath here. Check out QuotaPath.com. I would say that if you're interested in like how comp plans work, or you're either a startup or really thinking about this, comp.quotapath.com is our compensation hub, and it has scenario modeling, quota to OT ratio, SDR plans. Really great opportunity to just like play around with it. It's ungated, so you can just like mess around with it. And if you find a plan that you want to check out or create or scenario model, you can pull that into a free workspace right within Comp Hub. So great way to do that.
Nice. I love it. Love the ungated way to get started as well.
Yes.
As the marketing person, that's good stuff.
It's very PLG of us.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So first one is, what's one marketing trend that you would unsubscribe from?
I am really disappointed on how many people do the send later and all send at the exact same time. My 9 a.m. Monday inbox is awful. I hate that trend. Can we please make it like, fine, send an automated message, but just like kill it that it's 9 a.m. Eastern time on Mondays, please.
All right. Speaking about email, is email dead?
No, not at all. I think it's one, I tend to respond to a handful of sales emails a month that feel like they're personal. And two, it's the very big mode. It's the only mode of communication that I have with outside of text with my like board or other folks where they're not internal to the company, but they're in my network. So email itself is not dead at all.
We've heard about your flying, and I'm guessing that's probably one of the things here. But what do you do for fun?
Yeah, I do. I absolutely do fly. I'm a commercially rated pilot. Um, and my parents live in the Outer Banks, North Carolina. I tend to go some weekends in the summer down there and hang out with the girls. So that's a big part of it. Outside of that, my wife and I have lived in many different cities over the years. We made 6 moves in 2 years one time, and so like we're very focused on food scenes, like many people are. And now that my girls are older, so I have an 11-year-old and twin 8-year-olds, it's been nice to get outdoors. We went hiking here locally just yesterday. We're doing a lot of the things that we did pre-kids, which I really
Nice.
appreciate.
Yeah, yeah.
You like,
Yeah.
everyone talks about, yeah, I love to hike and outdoors and I love the food scene, and then you have kids and all those things go away.
It's a lot harder.
But then they come back, and I'm enjoying the resurgence of those things coming back in our lives.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I've got an 8 and a 6-year-old, so
Yeah,
I'm
you're
starting
almost
to
there.
see the light on
You're the
that.
light then
Yeah.
the tunnel is here.
Yeah. Who's one person that you admire in the business community and why?
That's a really great question. I would say Sam Jacobs is the CEO of a community called Pavilion, and I really admire how he's been pretty authentic in his voice. We ourselves had actually started a podcast that we do on a weekly basis to talk all things market and what's going on in founder world called Top Line, that I really enjoy. But I admire his thoughtfulness and his approach to to all things startup related. And then my co-host there is Asad Zaman, who's the CEO of Sales Talent Agency, and he's in Toronto, so he's a Canadian,
Nice.
and he also has a very thoughtful approach. So those are 2 people that I admire, and I take every week. I take something from those guys and what they're doing and how they're thinking about the world.
Nice, nice. I just met Sam in Boulder at actually an Insight CEO conference.
Yeah,
So it was cool. Yeah,
I had a conflict. I couldn't make it there, Pierce.
We could have met up
We
in
could have
person.
met there.
Yeah,
Yeah, they were supposed to go on a hot air balloon ride with, I think, Pablo Dominguez, but the wind was
Yeah. Oh, we got up at 5 a.m. to do that.
Did you go on, or was it wind? Wind was too.
Wind didn't cooperate with us that time. Yeah. You've shared a ton of great advice already today, but yeah, is there maybe one piece of career advice that you have that you think might help others?
Yeah, I mean, especially for founders who can get so emotionally wrapped into their businesses, which I appreciate and understand intimately well. But I think the thing to keep in mind is that there's always a next time, an opportunity to get better and learn. So like, it doesn't mean that everyone should leave their businesses, but I'm just saying this was advice that my dad gave me when I founded TrendKite, and I co-founded it with my co-founder, but I didn't realize at the time I wanted to be the CEO, and I wasn't. I was the founder and president. And I had this ego challenge at that time where I was very frustrated. And my dad made the comment like, AJ, you're 27. You're always going to have a next time. You're always going to have an opportunity to start a company and be in that seat and learn. And you know what? It's not going to be easy. So maybe just enjoy and take a step back and like learn and grow in the role that you have. And it was probably the best advice that I've ever received, because it allowed me to leave my ego at the door in almost anything that I do. And I know the CEO role can be very ego driven. There's David Ogilvy once said that there are no statues of committees in your towns, and that is true. You walk around your town, you're going to see a statue of a committee. There's a statue of one, and that is something that I think about. But at the same time, I just like, you're going to enjoy the journey. You have to leave your ego at the door. Otherwise, you're just going to get so emotionally distraught and stressed out about the world, and it's not going to be healthy.
Nice. Yeah. Always another time. Solid wisdom from Dad there. Last one. Who else should we interview on the Unsubscribe podcast?
Well, I mean, we mentioned Sam and Asad. I think those are great people. But, I would say that there's 2 thought leaders within my own company, and both have had like founder pieces to their story. Sarah Strope, our chief marketing officer, who was with TaxJar, acquired by Stripe. She was with a company called Cloudin, acquired by IBM, and she has a wealth of information and experience. And then Ryan Milligan, my Senior Director of Revenue Operations, has been with Wayfair and HubSpot. And he's on a really interesting journey and path. And I look to the thought leaders and thought partners in my own organization as really interesting people. And someone that if anyone says, who should I talk to? I will immediately plug them.
Yeah, love it. Would love some intros there. Right on. Well, AJ, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for the time. We've heard through your founding story of your first company. Heard some good lessons learned that you had there, and what you're taking into building QuotaPath, which, we're using it at NAC. It's a great platform. And I feel like you're one of those people when I talk to different salespeople that I always learn a lot from. So thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your stories and sharing how people can improve their sales. Really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much, Pierce, for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Unsubscribed, a podcast created by NAC. If you enjoyed this episode of Unsubscribed, be sure to subscribe to my podcast and leave a review on your favorite podcast player. If you have any feedback or want to chat, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or follow me on Twitter at marketing_101. Cheers.